of an old retro 1950s house as we listen to retro 1950s Christmas carols. Hope you guys are doing good if you celebrate Christmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope your weekend was radical, man. And I hope that this coming year goes good for you. So, if you're new here, if you're tuning in, if you're just now waking up, or maybe you just have been doing other things and not paying attention to what's going on, seismically speaking, this morning, a few hours ago now, a 7.9 earthquake struck in South America, recorded 7.9 by the Geoscience Australia, which I will just go ahead and open up here. Geoscience Australia, well, if I can get it on the screen. Here we go, Geoscience Australia. See that? 7.9 they have, and you guys are welcome to check their website for the information. Now, the USGS went with 7.7, and the Europeans following suit with the USGS went with that, 7.6, 7.7. Fine, they can do their downgrade, upgrade thing. Now, 7.9 is fully consistent with the warning that we issued, and the warning we issued actually was 7 days ago. So let's just go ahead and show that to you here really quick. Let me take you over to my YouTube page and check this out. Here's my video from December 18th, published on December 18th. It's got about 10,000 views. And check this out, guys. We issued a specific warning for South America. And let me just take it back a few minutes here. We'll just play it from the point where, towards the end of the video, where I'm issuing a 7-day warning, a 1-week warning, for a 7 to 8.0 earthquake to strike South America. And we warned 2 areas in South America. Before I play this for you, I'll just tell you really quick. A deep earthquake occurred right here in Peru, a deep 6.4. And we said, watch out on both sides of the deep earthquake for potential large movement to occur, 7 to 8.0. Now, that's a 50-50, right? Well, both spots were hit on either side. 2 fatalities up here in Ecuador at the Colombia border, where we issued our warning to the north, and now the 7.7 down to the south with another swarm. So up to the north, it topped out near 6.0. We had a swarm of 5s and 6 near 6 that killed 2 people. This 7.7, no fatalities reported. So the smaller of the earthquakes struck up to the north and it caused 2 deaths. The larger earthquake struck down to the south and no casualties reported. But there are damages reported in the area. So the reason this struck overall, let me go ahead and play for you the video and you can just hear it for yourself. Now, this is a 9-minute long video where I start out and I'm just talking about the deep earthquake that occurred over in South America, which let me hit play here. You can see it on the map as I'm talking here. Raised high off the globe, see that? All right. So, let me just turn on the audio. We're one of the deepest and the largest. Now, I'm going to give you guys a hint here. The last time we saw a deep 6.3, 6.4, it was over here. That was followed by the movement that we are talking about now. That was followed by Italy being hit, New Zealand being hit, Japan being hit. That deep 6.3 that hit over here, roughly at the same depth. So we saw a boatload of 7s increase after the 6. Is that going to happen again? Well, over here in the East Pacific, what's going on here, guys? Pressure comes across from the pressure zone, obviously, where our large earthquakes are, here in the West Pacific. And it hits South America like a wall. The pressure has nowhere to go. And in this case, the pressure hits it, has nowhere to go, will either go north, south, or try to go underneath the plate. Now, when the pressure tries to go underneath the plate, it also tries to go around the plate, out towards the mid-Atlantic ridge, towards one of our 2 termination points. The X mark down to the south, or the X mark coming off of northern South America. Now you'll notice this is right in between our 2 arrows, but this is so far down below. So, next 3 days, we need to watch for 1 to 2 magnitudes larger to be striking at one of our nearby silent zones. Nearby silent zones could be up to 1,000 kilometers away.
Now listen.
So we're looking at Ecuador into North Peru,
I changed it at
Colombia.
the end of the video, by the way.
Colombia could be at risk. Ecuador could be at risk. Or we go down to the south and we look at Bolivia, Argentina, Chile, right at their border region, in between our letter D and our swarm. So, look guys, this is going to increase things over here in the East Pacific. There's no doubt about that. The question is it going to go all the way up to 8.4? That's really the only question. It's not a question of whether or not there's going to be an excitement. It's not a question of whether or not there's going to be shallower, larger earthquakes from this. It's only a question of how big is it going to go. Just ask the people over in Italy how that deep 5.8 worked out for them. They had a deep 5.8 at 560 kilometers deep. This is a deep 6.4 at 600-something kilometers deep. So ultimately, when we take a look at that, we've got to understand there is pressure coming up from the core of the Earth up through an area called the asthenosphere. And I'm going to show that to you. This is a graphic on my website here. Thanks to many viewers who have helped me get this stuff together. But this is basically what's happening in a nutshell. This is a cutout, not to scale, of the interior of the Earth. Starting at the plasma core, plasma energy core, we go up through melted liquid magma. As we go up towards the surface, you get a few hundred kilometers down, and you're into an area called the asthenosphere. The asthenosphere is just a complex word for the semi-melted magma down below the plates. As the pressure comes up through the asthenosphere, it hits the bottom of the rigid plate, in which case it then goes up further through the plate and causes fractures, earthquakes. So down below South America, below Peru, we had pressure coming up. The reason pressure is coming up, or I should say the reason pressure is striking down so low and we're seeing a big earthquake like this, is because pressure is coming from over here in the West Pacific, hitting here and trying to go underneath the plate, seeking the easiest way, the path of least resistance around the plate. Like water hitting a solid object, it's going to try and go under it and around it, and maybe even over it, but it can't because, well, in this case, we're not talking about water. We're talking about seismic pressure. So it's trying to go underneath the plate, causing a large 6 in an area where we don't normally see any deep earthquakes, which means it's a rare deep earthquake, which means the potential for a large shallow earthquake is there for the next few days. Okay, so it's not all week we have to watch. I'm just watching for about 7 days. I'm sorry, just watching for about 5 days out of the 7 days.
Okay, so there it is. So first we issued 3, then we come back and say 7. I'm watching for 5 to 7 out of the 7. So that was 7 days ago. So we, again, when you're talking about potential over a week, issuing a forecast for a week ago, we warned South America and we said both sides were going to be hit. Both sides were hit. 2 people died to the north, nobody died to the south, both large earthquakes. Now, I believe they downgraded this Ecuador earthquake to get it underneath 6. I really do. I talked about that when it hit. I talked about that when the 2 people died. I said, look, a 5, come on, man. 5's knocking down huge structures and swarming out the way it did. It had to be greater, and they did the downgrade. And so this is a 7.9. If you check the Geoscience Australia feed, you will see it. And that's consistent with the other 7.9 that struck over here. So a 7.9 struck over, and we're getting multiple aftershock striking. That's going to keep happening, guys. We got 4 after 4 after 4 striking. But over here, the 7.9 hit this past week. And the 7.9 over here in the West Pacific was followed by a 7.9 over here in the East Pacific. They went with 7.7, whatever. So 7.9 over here, 7.7 over here. I just think that's amazing. And they had a 7-day warning in South America on the 18th. So I'm trying to get it down to a very fine science, and it's, of course, very hard to get things a week out. I mean, I want you to think about weather. When your weather forecaster, are they able to name it down to what the exact temperature is going to be a week out, right? I mean, so if they can't do that with the temperature, of course, I'm trying a one-man operation trying to figure out what the magnitudes are going to be and where. So it's our middle point. Here's the other thing I would like to point out. The middle point between the deep earthquake and our termination zone. So to see the middle point between our deep earthquake and termination zone, let me open up the USGS last month's worth of earthquakes. Now this is showing us last month 4.5 and greater, but I think you'll get the picture of what I'm talking about here. Okay, so see our deep earthquake raised high off the globe here? Hopefully you guys are making that out. You can. Okay? That's the deep 6.4. That's what led me to issue the warning for a 7.4 to 8.4 to strike. Now the 7.4 to 8.4 has hit, and look where it struck. Look where the deep earthquake is. Okay, it comes down to... Here, let me get all the other... There we go. See where our 6.4 is. Now go down the coast following our two sets of arrows. See these arrows that go down to the south? And go around the bend over to our letter X, right? Okay, well, where's the halfway point between the 6.4 and the letter X? It comes right in here into Chile. I hope you can make that out. So, the fulcrum point, the halfway point between our extremely deep earthquake and our termination point where the energy finally rests is the spot where the shallow, large earthquake hit. Now take that into conjunction with the other earthquakes that struck over here in the West Pacific over the past several weeks. Here, look at the last month's worth of large earthquakes. Now they downgraded a few of these to be below 8.0, but both of these earthquakes over here in the West Pacific were above 8. So the 7.8 was an 8, the 7.9 was an 8.1 to begin with. They downgraded this one to 7.8, and they downgraded the 8.1 to 7.9. Well, these are the largest earthquakes of the year, all striking within the past couple weeks. I would dare say there is something going on. Now, I believe we know what's going on, which is our deep earthquakes. You have to go and look at the deep earthquakes that struck this week. The deep earthquakes that struck this week displaced the whole West Pacific. I did a line measurement tool. You guys remember this a few nights ago? I did a line measurement from where our deep earthquake is down here at Fiji, where the letter D is, all the way up here off the shores of Kamchatka, Russia. And we found out it was something like 5,800 miles or 8,000 something kilometers apart. And I said 8,000 kilometers apart is being displaced right now by these deep earthquakes. Verbatim, that's what I said. Then I said after that, well, that means that this is going to displace not only the West Pacific, but it will also displace the East Pacific. And it's pretty obvious at this point. The East Pacific has now displaced equal to our major movement over here in the West Pacific. So one side gets hit, then the other, and it bounces back and forth like a tennis match when we see these deep earthquakes occur on both sides. So, summed up, really quick one more time. A deep 6.4 struck 7 days ago here at the Brazil-Peru border. This prompted me to issue a warning for 2 locations. One location was at the Ecuador-Colombia border, and the location at the Ecuador-Colombia border was hit by the biggest swarm in months, and 2 people died. Okay, right where this Colombia-Ecuador border swarm is. We also issued a warning for the area to the south at the Chile-Argentina border region. And halfway points, oh, by the way, both of these are halfway points. So the Ecuador and Colombia earthquake that you see on the map here now in red is halfway between where the deep 6.4 is and our X mark up here. It's come down around, maybe a little under half. And now this earthquake striking directly halfway point, the fulcrum point. You guys understand fulcrum points, right? Did you ever sit on a seesaw when you were a kid? You know, one kid on one side, other kid on the other. You got a heavy kid sit on one side and you're the lightweight kid, you're going up, right? Okay, well these fulcrum points are hit, but they're along the plate boundaries. So that fulcrum point is that middle point where the seesaw balances on, okay? And these fulcrum points are the spots that are hit with the large earthquakes. That's a discovery that we've made. It took 7 years of research to figure this all out. Which way does the pressure transfer? How do we get large earthquakes in the East Pacific off the earthquakes in the West Pacific? Took a lot of time. A lot of time. 7 years worth of watching. Oh boy, oh boy. So, much love. Much love to everybody. Have a plan and be prepared. West Coast of the United States, you should now really be paying attention. Japan, you should now be paying attention. Europe, you should now be paying attention. Go back and watch my warnings. I put out 72-hour warnings 24 hours ago for certain areas that we're watching now for movement. This now completes the 7-day forecast for South America, issued 7 days ago. And I'm glad I ultimately put 5 to 7 days on it. Because, at first I said 3 days, and then I quickly reassessed. Look, it's going to take a couple more days to go down to the south. Well, here we are. Day 7, Christmas Day of all days. Now, there are some people bringing up the galactic wave. Excuse me, let me get a sip of my coffee here. Drinking the fine last pot of my English brew that was sent to me by a viewer. So, drinking that up right now, coffee from UK. But, no, ultimately, guys, I just want to point out that the 7-day warnings that we issue, I don't take it lightly. I mean, when we tell you to tell your friends, family, loved ones, coworkers, professionals in South America to watch for a potential up to 8.0 earthquake this week, that's, I have a 1 in 52 chance, of weeks out of the year. And so that alone right there, but the galactic wave that everybody was talking about, which I'm not calling, I'm calling it the galactic wave because that's what everybody else is calling it, but the wave that showed up on the Mimic microwave background imagery, the latest thing has been to come over and accuse me of hoaxing it. You know how many people have come in the past few days? You're a hoaxer, you're hoaxing this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I've shown this system since 2011. We've used it to observe solar flares and stuff that they denied in the past. By the way, there were past solar flares that hit the Earth, and nobody's shocked by this. This happens all the time. The sun emits a solar flare, or a CME sometimes, coronal mass ejection, or sometimes even a filament burst that's directed towards Earth. And charged particles come towards Earth. It causes what's called a solar storm. When these heavy solar storms happen, and when large solar flares occur that are facing Earth, we see on the Mimic microwave background imagery distortions that show up on the sun-facing side of the Earth when the particles hit the planet. And guess what they said when we started to show the solar flares? The people at Mimic said it was an error, and that there was no way a solar storm could show on it. And then it happened again. It happened 5 times with X-class flares. Big X-class flare happens. 2 days later, when the solar storm hits, next thing you know, microwave background imagery is pulsing and showing things over the area where the sun is directly on as the charged particles are hitting. So it shows solar flares. But they denied it and said it was just a mistake. Because they didn't know what it was when it was happening. They weren't paying attention to the solar weather. So you can imagine some giant thing hits on the Mimic. Some person on YouTube, me, makes a video saying, look guys, the solar flare is hitting. Then they come out and issue a statement, oh, it's just a mistake. It doesn't show anything. Well, that would be okay if it didn't happen more than once, but it's happened 5 or more times with X-class flares and CMEs. Secondly, we've used Mimic to show us man-made systems like the space fence. Or do you think it's just a coincidence that a pulse appears over the same island that Raytheon built their space fence that's operating on the same bandwidth that's observable with Mimic? So I've used this system for years, showing everything scientifically speaking. There's no conspiracy in showing a solar flare. Okay? But why would they deny it? Right? That's the real question you got to ask. Why would they deny that it's showing a solar flare? I mean, it's obvious. It's timed right. It's hitting the spot. Solar storms happening. Why would they deny it? Well, because it's a weather system for observing the weather. They don't want people to think it's showing solar. It's an unintentional byproduct of the system. It's not intended to show that, the solar storm. But it's a way to visually observe the solar storm. It's amazing. So, now here comes a giant pulse. And they say they say the same thing that they said about the solar flare. Now a big earthquake hits, and guess what everybody's saying? Just chance. Just chance. Really? The 7.9? It's The largest earthquake of the year. The other 7.9 was the largest earthquake of the year this past week. So largest earthquakes of the year this week, two 7.9s. One on each side of the plate. At the time of the solar storm, or whatever you want to call it, the wave or the anomaly, or we're not going to call it a mistake or a glitch. You know, by the way, people used to say HARP rings were glitches in the radar, remember? They said HARP rings were glitches on IntelliCast. Then I started using other systems, and they said it was a glitch on the NextRad. Then I started consulting the NextRad third-level data, and they said I was faking it. So that's where they are now. They're trying to say I'm a hoaxer. Well, I'm not a hoaxer because in my video I completely leave open the fact that it could be nothing. So I'm not doing it for fame. Oh, and you don't get popular on doing these topics either, even if you get a lot of views. Popularity is something that on YouTube is extremely hard to garner. You cannot garner popularity on YouTube, as evidenced by the fact that there's still only 500 people in here after the largest earthquake of the year hits in South America on Christmas Day, in an area where we warned. So if there's no popularity in forecasting earthquakes, I would dare say there's no popularity in showing Mimic, which half the people don't even know what they're looking at, and the other people don't believe it. So I just showed what was happening in real time. In my video, you got to understand, I look at Mimic, I see something going on, I immediately make a video to document it. As I said in the video, I'm doing this to document this for future reference in case something happens. So, you know, again, we have to wait and see and observe. Science is the study of things that are observable and repeatable. And so I don't see how anybody could get on and say, oh, it's not going to do anything, and it's not anything, when they themselves have never been commenting or seen anything like it before. And me, the one making the video, is saying, I've never seen anything like this before. I don't know what to make of this. Will it cause a large earthquake? If there's a large energy potential with it, then yes, it has the potential to cause a earthquake, like the solar flares do, which they denied. I mean, come on, they deny that solar flares cause earthquakes, up until a couple channels came out on YouTube and started proving the solar connection to earthquakes. And it's not just solar flares, it's coronal holes, CMEs, and filament ruptures that are facing Earth. Whenever there's a large amount of electrical potential energy coming at the Earth, it converts to DC, like stuff that powers a circuit board, only much more powerful. And the voltage, the DC energy, goes to ground, down to the core of the Earth. And it immediately causes earthquake activity. We've seen it happen hundreds of times in the past few years with solar events. Well, if it's not a solar event, but it is an energy event of some kind, well then it stands to reason, logically, that it would also perturb the areas around the planet, and that now has occurred. Since a week ago, when the wave hit, same time that the wave hit, we have that deep earthquake happening down in South America. Oh, same day, 18th and the 19th. Deep earthquake down in South America, and the wave hits. I made both videos within a day of each other. First the deep earthquake video on the 18th, then the galactic wave video on the 19th. And we said, watch for this week. Here we are, well within the parameter of the week, and the largest earthquake of the year in South America hits, and equal to the largest earthquake of the year for the whole planet, 7.9. Okay? So, word up. Word up to my people. Have a plan. Be prepared. You will not be scared. I guarantee several of the people watching today, even though I was asleep when the earthquake hit this morning, so, you know, it is Christmas. And when I was asleep this morning, I'm sure several of my viewers were like, aha, eureka, it's the halfway point between the X and the deep earthquake. There's the large earthquake Dutch was looking for in South America this week, on top of the Ecuador earthquake that killed the 2 people. There it is. So, forecast fulfilled. Forecast fulfilled. West Coast was hit this week. Midwest was hit this week. South America was hit this week. Largest earthquakes of the year hit this past week. Japan, you're the only location really over here in the West Pacific that I would still expect to see a noteworthy size earthquake occur. And when I say a noteworthy size, it would be above 6, but it would be or near 6, striking here off the coast. Now, West Coast U.S., you still have another day to go, and we're looking for 5.7, 5.8 to be striking here near our arrow. Okay, so right where our arrow tip is, out here, Eureka going to the arrow tip, is the spot we're watching for a 5.7 to 5.8. Another day to go on that watch. West Pacific, New Zealand, look, guys, if we see any new deep earthquakes, that's going to, again, increase your likelihood of shallower, larger movement. This big earthquake here, I don't know, and I really don't know. This is something, a variable that, well, I'm still observing myself to see if there's any connection, is that when there are deep earthquakes over here in South America, we see movement that translates back over to New Zealand, and we may have to add one final red arrow, a double-sided red arrow that shows an arrow going both ways, north of our X's. When there's a deep earthquake over here, there's sometimes follow-up movement in New Zealand. But with shallow earthquakes, this is something I'm observing now. I can't issue a rule on it, and I can't say it's 100%, and I can't issue a forecast based on it. I am personally watching, scientist-style watching. So I'm trying to watch and see if there's compensation movement that bounces back over towards New Zealand off this shallow, large earthquake. Sure, it bounces back and forth when there's deep earthquakes. That makes sense. I mean, it's down below the plate. Pressure could transfer both regions back and forth. That's something that Edmund Kratzer, Bud, who's one of our moderators, that's something he first noticed. So he deserves credit for that find about the deep earthquakes back and forth like a tennis match. But the shallow, large earthquake, I don't know. Don't know. If you're in New Zealand, I guess you probably should just pay attention to it. I mean, look where it is. It's on the same latitude. It's just across the Pacific. We see earthquakes do it with deep, but shallow, I don't know. Oh, I hate having that kind of guesswork in there. But just if you're in New Zealand, I would dare say, just be aware that it could, and I say could lightly. If it does, then we'll be able to establish a rule here. I mean, if a large earthquake hits in New Zealand next, out of the blue, and we're like, oh shit, another 7 has hit. Oh my God. Well, now we'll know why. And we'll know why I wasn't able to issue a forecast on it, because the deep earthquake that we would normally expect wouldn't have occurred. Okay, so I'm getting ahead of myself. I just posing postulates here on what could happen with this large earthquake. But ultimately, I would expect it to follow our arrows and go out towards our double X mark out here east of the South Sandwich Islands. Okay, so how many people are in here right now? Let's take a quick look. 545 people. Hey, Merry Christmas. If you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. Hope you're having a good one. If you're in South America, guys, I'm sorry that you got hit by a large earthquake. You had a 7-day warning to prepare in the areas down to the south in particular. The areas up to the north were already hit, Ecuador. So those 2 people that died, I mean, their families at, Christmas time and all that, that sucks. All right, so, on a lighter note, you guys, don't be scared. Be prepared. Being prepared means knowing what to do when a large earthquake like this hits. I just want you to imagine if a 7 were to hit. Let's say I am 2 magnitudes off on what I'm warning for California. Let's say it just goes up through the roof, and instead of a 5.7 hits, just like down here, a 7.7 hits. Well, that's going to definitely cause damage if a large earthquake hits. I got it wrong, and a large earthquake hits. That's why you need to be prepared. You got to understand, the 3 largest earthquakes of the year just hit within the last couple weeks, last week and a half. South America, West Pacific. Well, where else does that leave us? That leaves us Japan, Alaska, and West Coast of the United States, and maybe Mexico, Canada. So, 3 of the areas have been hit, and there's 3 areas that could be hit. Does that make sense? If the whole West Pacific has moved on a 7.9 level in the West Pacific and East Pacific in the last week and a half, then it stands to reason, logically speaking, that it would possibly compensate the same amount to the north. That the whole Pacific would move on that 7.0 level. Right? I mean, if the whole plate is connected, and the areas to the west move and the areas to the east moved, then the area to the northwest will move, and the area to the northeast will move. And that puts Japan, Alaska, and west coast of the U.S. and Canada under the gun. I mean, it's worthy to suppose that. It's not wrong to assume that the plate is going to try and compensate for this large movement. So that's why you need to be on watch. Okay? We will be back in a little while if anything else goes down. Of course, areas far to the west. We talked about this the other day. Sumatra, that you're on the watch for a 6. You're on the watch for a 6 in Sumatra. We talked about that a day and a half ago, and we put a 72 or a 3 to 4 day watch on that. So we're day 2 into the 3 to 4 day watch for Sumatra. Ultimately, look, you can't discount the wave because we've never seen something like it before. There's been, other similar things, but nothing like what we saw 7 days ago with this wave that hit. And I was the skeptic. See, anybody here who's calling me out, they're new. They're noobs. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. I saw people make videos against me. And I'm like, what? I'm like, don't they know what happened? How I publicly chastised BP Earthwatch and Paul Begley and the others for talking about a galactic wave that I said was not going to hit and was never in existence and there was nothing. And then I'm looking at Mimic and whoa, across the screen comes this giant planetary wide wave that I've never seen before. On a system that I use all the time to look at all sorts of things. So, I had to apologize publicly to BP Earthwatch. And I'm willing to eat it. I'm into science. If I deny that something's going to happen, and then it happens, guess what I don't do? Go into spin mode like all these people that come in and try and deny it. Right? So I will eat it. I'll say, look, looks like BP Earth got this one right. You know what I mean? Sorry, BP. So, look, you can discount it all you want as being an error or a mistake, but you've got to be willing to explain to me how they denied the solar flares and how that was a mistake, and how it can happen every time and it be a mistake every time the solar flare hits. It's not a mistake when the solar flare hits. The system is showing the solar flare unintentionally. Now, they may not know that. The weather guy manning the University of Wisconsin Mimic may not be into solar weather, may not understand reflection of microwaves using particles and plasma, may not understand radio frequency physics involving plasma generation, natural and man-made. You know what I mean? So they're into weather, they're using it for precipitation enhancement study, they might even understand basic microwave, but they don't understand that their system is showing particle events, solar, planetary-wide particle events that are reflective and reflect microwaves like as if it is precipitation or a solid. They don't understand that because those are new discoveries that were made after Mimic was developed. And I guarantee you these graduate students and professors at the college don't know what I'm telling you. Guaranteed, I promise you 100%. If they claim they do, I debate them on it. Because I guarantee you they don't. Who sits there and studies HARP? Do they study HARP? They'd have to study HARP in order to understand what I'm talking about. If you're a denier of HARP, then you don't know what I'm talking about. You're going to consider it a conspiracy for me to tell you plasma reflects things like a solid. I don't know why. Maybe it's because you got brainwashed by the mainstream media and the others who decided they didn't want to admit that a place even existed. Maybe they got caught up in the mind control conspiracy theories online and didn't want to do real science. I don't know. But that's what I've done for the last 7 years here online. They said HARP rings were glitches. Can you believe that? Can you believe scientists said HARP rings were glitches? Because look, guys, look. Look at this. Look at this, please. HARP rings created by the U.S. military, and they called it a HARP ring. So it took me, back in 2011, all the people came in and said, HARP rings are just a glitch in the system. They're just a glitch. And then we find the military documentation from dtic.mil where they created the actual visible air glow up in the sky in the very same shape of the HARP ring, and they called it HARP ring. And they used HARP to do it. Now look at the radar systems. Here's what we were seeing. We were seeing these, and skeptics came in and tried to say, first they tried to say I photoshopped it. Then they tried to say it was birds and bugs. Then they tried to say it was a NEXRAD radar error. Meanwhile, same time they're denying it, the military, this is in 2011, This screenshot here, 2011, same time the military in 2011 is creating them. And they describe it as an upside-down target top hat shape that takes shape over the transmitter. I just cannot believe it. Here's the PDF with the pictures in it from dtic.mil, which I can click on and it'll save. See? So if you want to download it from the military site, just be aware you'll be downloading from a military site. But here's what happens. When the waves cross, there's an interferometry that happens, and they can modulate that and create particle stripping, electron cascade, plasma, like the northern lights on a concentrated scale. So they're creating mini northern lights here, basically. But these are superheated. That's super hot. They're using high frequency to do that. Well, we've also found they use microwaves. So, everybody said that was an error, right? Everybody said that was a glitch. Well, now I'm proved right on the biggest, look at these screenshots that I took. They tried to say we're birds and bugs over my own hometown. This giant target appears over my hometown. A tornado hits the center of the target 2 days later. Happened over and over again. They tried to say it was a glitch. A glitch. A glitch? Look at this one. Coming from Dover, Delaware, on the East Coast, at the Air Force Base. Coming out of the Air Force Base. See this? A giant pulse creating plasma up in the atmosphere. They said it was a glitch. Then 12 hours later, a tornado formed look at the storm here now. The only tornado to formed on the East Coast directly over the air base. And right at the center is where the transmitter is. So the tornado, the rotation, what happens is these pulses go up into the atmosphere and they superheat. Like I said, the U.S. Navy creating this northern lights from HAARP. Well, the transmitters, the NEXRAD radar microwave transmitters, do the same thing on a concentrated scale over a smaller area. And so when the heat from the microwave hits the cold air, it creates a rotation. Plus the radar itself is rotating. So it creates a vortex. The vortex then attracts storm formation. And you can see very closely, right on top of the air base, right at the center, is where the transmission came from. And that's where the tornado formed several hours later. The only spot to get hit. And it's an East Coast tornado in Dover, Delaware. Now here's the experiments where I proved they did it. So scientists over in Switzerland did the experiments to prove whether or not microwaves could cause rotation above the transmitter. This was all denied as a technical glitch. So, if that was all denied as a technical glitch and they got that wrong, and they denied the solar flares as a technical glitch and they got that wrong, doesn't it stand to reason that they're getting this wrong too? And that the wave that's hitting isn't a technical glitch? That it's real? I mean, if I'm supposed to use science as an example, then I've scientifically debunked my debunkers every single time they tried to say I was hoaxing something, which I don't do. I always provide the original link back and tell you what I think it is. And if I don't know what it is, I tell you I don't know what it is. And if I don't know what it's going to do, I tell you I don't know what it's going to do. I don't know what anybody would ask of a scientist other than that. I would expect you to expect me to not be a denier and not automatically dismiss it like everybody else does in the mainstream media and every other skeptic denier channel. That is not science. That is not interesting. And certainly it's not something that I do ever. I do not discount things as coincidence or chance until it can be proved that it's coincidence or chance. Until we have other examples by which to judge, or it's like doing a 1/4 flip. You guys ever do a quarter flip and you say heads or tails? Okay. Well, you can't base any statistics or any science on a single quarter flip. And that's exactly what the deniers are doing. They flip the quarter once, that's what it is, and that's what it is. No, you have to do that 50, 100 times. And you have to take the average between those. And if I'm doing that, I've already debunked the people who've debunked me so many times that if they say it's a glitch, guess what I automatically do? If I see something on a system that shows very odd, something strange going on, and I hear someone come back to me, that's just a glitch, I immediately double down on what I was originally believing, because there is some belief in, forming your hypothesis in science. And I go and I immediately take that as a cue that I'm right. Because they said that about fracking earthquakes. It's just a glitch. They tried to say some of the earthquakes are just glitches. Guys, when an inconvenient earthquake strikes, did you know this? When an inconvenient earthquake strikes in an area where they can get away with not reporting it, even if 50 stations pick it up, they'll say it's a glitch. Earthquake strikes at a fracking operation owned by an oil company. Guess what? Just a glitch. Now, I don't believe in this many glitches causing this many strange things. I sure don't. So, word up to my people. I'll be back on in a little while. I want you to always think outside of the box and question the official mainline story. Use science to debunk the debunkers if you are standing by something you find or discover that you can trust in the method. You don't have to make it a matter of belief. You don't have to inflate things to be greater than they are. So this galactic wave stuff this past week, I understand why people are being the way they're being about it because of the claims that were made ahead of time that had, I believe, little foundation to them. Who knew what to expect? There was only a few people that were basing their predictions on a large earthquake based upon the 2004 wave that hit. Okay, that's fine. At least that has some science to it. But, there's other people that were talking about, end of the world and all that. I understand skepticism. I understand that you don't want to, doomsday stuff. So this isn't doomsday. This is a 7.7 earthquake, 7.7 to 7.9. We just had a 7.9 last week. They're the two largest earthquakes of the year. That's it. That alone should be enough, scientifically speaking, to get your antenna to stand up. Two largest earthquakes of the year struck in the last week. What's going on? What's going on? Did you know that scientists said that there is no translation between earthquakes over in the West Pacific and over here in the East Pacific, and that I was publicly chastised by Professor John Vidali from the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network, the guy who runs all the gear for the USGS up here in Washington State, that he publicly chastised me for saying that pressure transfers across the plate. That's the level of denial that I'm dealing with on a daily basis. So if somebody wants to deny something I'm showing on Mimic and accuse it of being a hoax, how did I hack? How did I hack? Hey, Laura, we let the cat in? How did I hack the Mimic site, guys? And if you're accusing me of hacking or hoaxing, then I would expect charges to be filed, and I'll see you in court. And I'm going to get the most expensive lawyer I can and get him to tack a whole bunch on so that I can at least get paid for your ignorance when you pay my legal fees. Okay? Seriously, I'll go to court over it. You know what I mean? Like, you want to accuse me of hoaxing? I am not a hoaxer. That's one thing I'm not. You might disagree with my conclusions. You might disagree with. That's fine. Scientifically speaking, you can disagree with me and find fault with what I'm saying on any given thing, but let's stick to that. Because once we go to this whole you're a faker or hoaxer thing, that's maybe what you might throw at another channel on YouTube. It ain't gonna fly here. Ain't gonna fly. So, word to my people. Have a good Christmas. Merry, Merry Christmas. And if you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope you have a good New Year in the next coming days. Hope you have a good week. If you did celebrate Christmas, hope you got what you wanted if you did get anything. And I'm going to be doing a package opening here. I got to get my camera set back up. And I'll be doing a package opening. I've got about 20 or so packages to open, plus an additional 15 or 20 letters from all around the world. Got stuff from Kenya, Africa. Come on in. Got stuff from Kenya, Africa. Got stuff from Japan. Got stuff from all over the world. United States, Europe. So I can't wait to do this. We'll be doing it in about, well, let's say 3 hours from now. So it's noon West Coast time. I'm sure people are doing stuff with their families today. And I want to give everybody a chance to have dinner and then come home and turn on the old live stream and we can get into it together.
and open up all the packages, man. I am excited. I can't wait to see what everybody sent. Oh, man, I cannot wait. Been saving this stuff all week, so that'll be cool. Hey, everybody, listen. If you're new here, please subscribe. Trying to grow my channel to something impressive. I was hoping to hit 170,000 by Christmas. 170. As you can see, I'm at 179,913 at the moment. And that's way above where I was expecting to be for Christmas. I want to give a big hearty shout out to the channels who have given me shout outs, and I appreciate every little bit of help you've given. I'd be happy to talk to the larger channels or the smaller channels who've been promoting me. So if you guys want to set something up where we can all talk at some point, either on a radio type thing or on a live stream or whatever, I'd be happy to talk with people like BP and Paul Bagley and Secure Team and just any one of the people that has taken the time, even though it's not in their interest. Look, man, Dutchsinse, guys, I am one of the more controversial geophysics nerds on the internet. I've gotten smeared. I've been listed on the DHS website. So for people even to put their, to reach out, even the channels that I'm talking about here, I appreciate you taking the risk, because the people who have reached out to me in the past have gotten harassed, gotten shut down, and it's by Big Brother. So, all right. I'll be back. Again, we'll do this, let's say, at 7 p.m. Central Time. That's a couple hours beyond where I wanted to do it, but 7 p.m. Central Time will be 8 p.m. East Coast Time, will be 5 p.m. West Coast Time, U.S. And since a majority of the packages came from my U.S. viewers, I do want them to be free and clear of doing all their family stuff and then be able to watch this evening. So, we will open the packages in a few hours. We'll start again at 7 p.m. Central Time. So 4 hours. Okay, word. I'll be back.